Welcome to the Southwood Podcast, where we support the mission of Southwood Bible Church to teach the Word, strengthen the body, and defend the faith. Through engaging conversations, our goal is to equip and encourage our members in the Christian life. All right, well, welcome to episode 4, Southwood 2050. So the goal of this episode is really to look at the next 25 years of Southwood and envision what is it going to be, how is it going to get there, what do we want it to be. So the goal is really to help encourage dialogue and kickstart some planning that the church leaders are going to be engaging in towards the end of the month and then throughout the rest of the year. So we've broken the church up into 8 core facets, being leadership, education, outreach, body life, missions, music, finances, and facilities. So we'll kind of just work our way through talking about each one of those. And we're really just going to talk about what is it? What does it look like right now? What are some ideas about what we would like it to look like in the future? How are we going to get there? So really, this is just kind of brainstorming and kickstarting some planning. So with that, let's just start in with leadership. So just kind of outline what leadership is. It shouldn't be confusing, but leadership is the facet of ministry in which men from within the church are identified, trained, and deployed. How Southwood is led plays a central role in its ability to function and fulfill its mission. By 2050, this facet of ministry will be drastically different with many new faces. So obviously in the next 25 years, things are going to change. Leadership-wise would be at the forefront of that, because earlier he said that he's not planning on sticking around to 93.
Not to date the 8. I just thinking there's certain things at 93 I won't be doing if I'm around. But
we want a comprehensive list of this.
So they're slowly finding a way to shoo me out. So
I don't know if 93 is slowly.
Yeah,
I guess it is slowly.
That's a slow belief. But it's an interesting facet because we should think in that dimension of what will happen in 25 years. Excuse me. I think we should be thinking ahead in many realms. I just got a quick question to ask you since you set this up, which is again, they don't know out there. There's 2 things I'm going to ask. First of all, is there any reason? You didn't set this up in priority order. You just set it up, right?
I prioritized it a little bit. I didn't put a ton of thought into, don't get too detailed, but I do think leadership is a priority because the church kind of rises and falls on the leadership. And the leadership is responsible for the church. They're responsible for the direction it's going or not going, for what's happening, what's not happening.
Well,
so I think leadership is an important.
I think a lot of these, as we go through it, this is what I see. A lot of these things interact with each other.
Yeah.
Okay. So, except facilities, and finances, but I digress. I think it's interesting that you, as an ex-military guy, use the word deployed, though. I think it's kind of funny.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But since we're talking about leadership, though, and we just got through doing a Bible study with our men here at church, talking about leadership. Leadership is, like you said, a very important aspect, not just of church, but of life in general. And leadership needs to, I know this is going to sound silly to our audience, leadership needs to lead to a place that they're actually going so other people want to follow. So when we're talking about future leadership, we're back to that old question. What are we looking for in leadership?
Yeah, and I think to that point, leaders do lead, whether it's well or unwell.
Oh, that's true.
And I think even like within stagnant, dying churches, leaders are leading it there.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you something since you said that. Leading by what?
Inaction.
So they're really leading to nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm going back. True leadership should be going somewhere that other people want to see themselves. Okay. We're on the same page. I just think it's interesting that somebody, to your understanding, I guess I'm going to kind of culminate it. Leadership leads whether they know they're leading or not. Okay.
Yeah. And to that point, in unhealthy churches in particular, the leader may not be the pastor. He should be leading, but maybe there's a core group within the church, and
Ugh.
he's a newer pastor, and he might be leader on paper,
Like
but
board
not in
direction.
reality.
Yeah. Okay. Got what you're saying.
I mean, there's different aspects of that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Okay. So, how many of these questions do you want to?
yeah. I mean, so
or do you want to be more general?
yeah, we could. I mean, we could just start with so in 2050, how many pastors will Southwood have? Right now, we have one.
Right. Right.
Will we have one? Will we have less than one or more than one?
Well, I have a kind of direction in my mind. I've always seen. I'd like to see Southwood have gone in the 14 years, almost 15, working on 15 that I've been here. It starts with growth. I think churches need to grow in spirituality, first of all, of course, but they need to grow in numbers. And I think that's how many people you have, how many people can support or deal with various pastors. I'm of the inkling that when a church gets to a certain size, and people out there are probably going to disagree with me, a church needs to then retake part of their congregation and plant it somewhere else. When I've been addressed by certain people saying, well, you're the only church like that in Tulsa, that saddens me, because I think other churches should be teaching the Bible. Other churches should be bibliocentric, if you want to call it that. But to have one church in a city, we're limited to what we can do. So if we had different sister churches, like-minded churches, I think that, especially in the city of Tulsa, my goodness. Honestly, I don't think people realize in Tulsa, ORU, Oral Roberts, has done that. They constantly plant churches and spread their mess in different directions.
Some of these churches even have guts.
You're saying message, but you just stopped with mess.
They're mess. They're mess. Because biblically they're like Jello. But ideally, that's not a bad thing to because I think a church has to be a body of believers that interact with each other, that know each other, that grow together. And if you have a church 500,000, you're not doing that. The pastor, the pastor, whatever you want to call him, lead pastor, head pastor, only pastor, or pastors, can't know all that many people. So how many pastors should Southwood have, or will have? I think it's indicative of what we'll be doing at that point. I think it's important to have multiple leaders, whether you want to call them pastors or not, and they all should be on the same page, what direction they're going in, what they like to see the church in the future. And sometimes I think your next question, are they vocational or bivocational? They could be both. In other words, you can have some that are vocational and some bivocational. I think you learn a lot by being bivocational. I was one. But I think what kind of serves where church. So my ideal for Southwood has always been that we grow to about 200. We have a school, not a elementary or high school, but we have a theological school. So there's different things leadership could be doing. They could be helping with the school. They could be interacting with the church body, but they shouldn't be separated entities. They should be together on the same page to, again, what we lack today is the training of pastors. We really do. And although you two guys are really good candidates to do that, I think it's fantastic. We're limited in our time. We do. So we've got to outsource you to different theological seminaries to get that one. I think the church is still the place we should be. So I don't know if that helps you, but that's my thoughts on those kind of ideas.
So with how many pastors does Southwood have? Is that a right now, or you kind of rephrase that as how many will we have in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at 2050, so sure. 25 years down the road.
So I think that's dependent on, kind of as Pastor Bush was saying, how many people do we have? What will the church, like what will our local church look like numbers wise in 2050? Because I think that, pastoral ministry is really, are we covering our base as well? Is there a good ratio of, congregation members to leadership? And without knowing what that number will be, it's hard to say how many pastors we'll need. But I think that we should prepare for, an influx or an expansion of people. So like getting people in place like ourselves, and part of our core value, identifying people who can be identified, trained, and then deployed. I think that we should not, uh, you know, not pay attention to that. That made no sense, but that's okay. We should pay mind to that, identify those folks, and be prepared for more people. But yeah, I think it's hard to say at this point in time. And as far as whether the pastors will be vocational or bivocational, same thing. It depends upon what our operational budget is, and that's dependent upon the people that we have.
So what would you like to see?
I think that he threw out the number 200. Man, that's a tough one, because at that point in time, when will we start talking about splitting into two different churches, and having different, like maybe we try and increase our sphere of influence in the community at different locations and become kind of like sister churches. So maybe two churches of 100. I'm not sure. Maybe we won't even get to that number, but I think that keeping the ratio of people to where the pastor or pastors know their people. I think that the model today is, like at least in Tulsa, is let's grow the church as big as we can. Let's either broadcast a message on a screen or have a pastor. I mean, heck, I remember before I was here, like probably about 6 years ago, when I was just starting to get serious about Bible. I was going to church on the move, and I had a lot of issues. Not that I don't have a lot of issues today, but I had a lot of issues, questions about the Bible, had no foundation that I built upon or anything like that. And I was at church on the move, and I heard a really good sermon, that Whit George had done. And he went out in the lobby, and holy cow, the line was like to just talk to the guy was like 150 people. I remember I got up to him, I said, hey, this is what I asked him, and I don't mind sharing this. I was like, hey, can I get lunch with you? And he put me on a list for 7 months out to maybe have a lunch with him. So all I'm saying with that example is that's not a good model for a church. The pastor needs to be able to know his people, and to be able to minister to them directly, know their name. And so as far as the number of people, I don't know, but I would like to see, we grow big enough to where we could split off and maybe plant a church somewhere else in Tulsa, to where the sphere of influence could increase.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I agree with that. I think that the time to think about those things is like now. We shouldn't wait until we're at that point to then start thinking. I think planning for it, whether it's going to happen in 5 years or 25 years, we should have a general direction of where we're going. Regarding a number of pastors, I don't know that it's necessary to set a specific number. Some churches have taken different approaches. Like I've heard of
the screen.
elders.
I don't see you on the screen. I'm just making sure they know who's talking.
No,
Just
so they'll shoot for having an elder for every 12 families in the church, or so that they're avoiding those kind of issues of the pastor really isn't pastoring because he has no idea who's in the church. That type of issue. But I think these are things to think of. What is it going to look like in the future? We talked about the big one being training future leaders. What is that going to look like in 25 years? How is Southwood going to be doing that?
Well,
how would you like? And that's
yeah.
This is all spec. We don't know what it's going to be, but we can talk about what we would like it to be and what we're going to work. So that's really.
Well, again, we're back to the same thing. Can we start some kind of seminary within Southwood? I would love that. I think at some point we're going to have to address that. We will be limited because it's not going to be a place where professors will get paid a lot of money, kind of thing, because it'll be small. So getting the right guys in that maybe are retired pastors that were looking for the next stage of doing things that we would agree with theologically. But I think training once again should start at the local church level. We shouldn't pawn you off on somebody else that now you may learn something from the seminary and you think that's solid. And we say, well, the Bible doesn't support that kind of thing. So if it's in the hands of the local church and we agree on doctrinal issues, That's a good place to start, So goal. The goal is to have some kind of seminary or Bible Institute. I like that word better because seminary kind of rhymes with cemetery. So,
I've put a little bit of thought into this kind of thing.
okay.
I mean, we've got some good schools out there that are really accessible. Tyndale, Chief
Right.
are the ones I'm specifically referring to. I think what is lacking is practical pastoral training. And I mean, just within Oklahoma, we have a lot of little churches that don't have pastors or are soon to need pastors. Within that, where are they going to go to get pastors? They're going to put it out on, any number of.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it Ministry Watch? I don't remember the name. There's different websites that.
Well, Schaefer
out
has
there.
a site
Yeah.
that they do.
And so they're going to have a pastoral search committee. They're going to be looking for this
Right.
guy to just come in and all of a sudden, boom, he's the pastor. But what if there was a mentorship, internship type program set up to where there could be a guy who goes to this church and he's working, being coached all the time. And so he's serving in that local church, but getting coached and mentored by a group of pastors or leaders at a training center, more so.
And I think that's a fantastic thought because yes, seminary can teach you whatever ology you're in, whether it's angelology, whatever, just they can teach you the ologies, but actually being a pastor to setting up a sermon, interacting with the congregation, and pastoring, shepherding people, we don't have that setup.
Mm-hmm.
Even both of you guys doing a seminary, just on a class that's actually saying we're going to put you in Kansas, somewhere in Kansas, and you're going to be there for 2 months, and we're going to banter back and forth. I'm going to review your sermons, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because my dad, when he's a high school teacher, he did a program called DECA. I don't know if either of you guys are familiar with it. It was basically training kids to know the basics, basic math, basic English, those kind of things. And then get them a job. And they were directly responsible to answer to my dad or whatever other people were on staff to report in from their job. They get reports from their whatever job they were holding. So they were actually being put in the field. We miss those things. I don't even know today if your kids taught how to use a checkbook in school. So the practical, yeah, see, yeah, but we don't really need it. So I am talking about old. But it's interesting you brought that up. There's not the practical side of ministry really put out there. It's more of the academic. But I think with a true seminary within a church, obviously, if you two were part of the seminary and other people, we'd be integrating you in with both of these guys' pulpit supply often. But it'd be more of, let's walk through it. Let's talk about what you did. I think prayerfully, you and I interaction with last time you talked was very helpful, not only to me as somebody who cares about you, but for you to learn right and wrong, because we all have different ways we approach the ministry when we're in the pulpit, but at some point you're going to be the guy kind of thing. So when we're training people in the local church, that hands-on approach I think it's fantastic, and it's lacking. I don't know if Schaefer really has it in their programs that they actually put you in a place and say, okay, part of your scores is going to be, and same with Tyndale. And I don't know if they have that.
Tyndale doesn't, correct? Yeah, so they're focused on content. I mean, content, Bible surveys, biblical languages, things of that nature.
Which again, that's important, but it falls short. Because when going back to what we've been studying, Paul and Timothy was an active place, and Paul was mentoring him as he was a pastor.
Yeah, I think that the biggest practical gap in ministry in the local church is just the people aspect. Like deploy the content that you've learned and interact with people. That's the part that I think is lacking. Is okay, now you gotta equip you're equipped with the content. Now go be with the people and minister to them and work with them and develop the kids and develop the parents and do all that. That's the practical stuff. And then we've talked at length about, okay, well, now we're not just stewarding the people, we're stewarding the assets, the resources, the building and grounds, the lawn, the lights, the utilities, everything, so that you can't teach in seminary. You can mention it, but as far as like managing that and stewarding that, you don't get that without the on the job training kind of thing. You guys mentioned seminary. I'm reminded of a book I read by Edgar Sheen, and Edgar Sheen wrote a book called Organizational Development and Leadership. And he states that it takes about 10 years to reshape a culture of any organization, about a decade. If you were to ask my plant manager that, he'd say, we can do it in 3. But I think it takes, I guess, on average, a little bit of time. It takes some time. And so I think seminary could be something that is functioning out of Southwood someday. I'm not sure. I really am not sure if we'll be there by 2050. I think that as far as 2050 goes, in 25 years, I think we could have shifted the culture. And I'm not saying that we need to shift the culture because we need to. I'm just saying that it's going to change. And so as far as doing something big like that, we will have to shift the culture, because the 3 of us sitting at this table can't make something like that happen just by ourselves. We got to have people involved and engaged in the congregation. That's the biggest hurdle that I've seen is, a topic of conversation this morning in men's group, the first thing on the list, if anyone aspires, there's got to be a desire to get involved and to be a part of it. And so I think in the short term, as far as the selecting and training and deploying leaders, identifying people that have a desire, that demonstrate characteristics of good leadership, and then focusing on, okay, as far as content goes, what would be the critical content for them to learn in order to be deployed in our local church, at Southwood, and in what sphere would they serve in? And then, have some feedback mechanisms set up, so deploy them, have them work in an area, and then continually follow up, meet, coach, train, try different approaches as needed. But it starts with identifying people who want to do. I think that the temptation is identifying people who are ready to do that. And if we look at Southwood today, I think that there's some people where the desire is there, but there's going to take some effort on our part, to prepare and equip them to be able to do that well. So,
yeah. Anything else on leadership? Any thoughts?
Briefly, as far as how is leadership effectiveness measured, go back to a previous podcast, outcomes, effectiveness is measured by measurables, outcomes. So, I don't necessarily think that numbers is a solid indicator of effectiveness with the proper quality of teaching or leadership. I think that it's important to not just focus on just leadership, because a lot of people aren't going to want to pursue and dive deep like we do here at Southwood. If we kind of set that to the wayside and just focused on, can we blow this thing up to be large in numbers? Oh boy, could we? Because we know the tools and tricks to do it. But doing that while being faithful to what we're about here, like the doctrine and, our hermeneutic and being dispensational, we got to stick to that. And that might by itself, filter people out. But yeah, I'd say outcomes, like whether or not it's, being able to quiz our youth and be like, hey, do you have an understanding of the framework of the Bible? Or adults, it's like, hey, as far as in the home, equipping your kids and teaching them, do you have a good framework of how to do that? And the answers that we want those to be like, yes, I've been equipped at Southwood to be able to do that well. That would be a measure of effectiveness, I think.
The church growth model kind of jumped out of the 50s and developed into some different things and has become a problem. And by and large, it's focused on metrics, number of people, finances, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
And those are, I think it's an error to completely ignore those metrics altogether. Like you have to measure that. You have to consider those things. Making that the priority is the problem, but then that leads into, well, do we just not measure things because we're trying to avoid that problem of the church growth
Model, yeah.
deal? Or, and then how do we measure things well? And I don't have a solid answer on that. We need to develop that, I think.
Yep. And, we've identified in this podcast that, we're a church, we're a spiritual organization, an extension of the body of Christ, right? We understand that, but at the same time, we're a group of people, and they're like, I don't want to use the term, maybe I shouldn't. I'll use it. Secular studies, like just studies have shown, that when people are working together with people, what works. And if you're trying to motivate a large group of people together to move in the same direction, that some things do work, like kind of cross-disciplinary, so to speak. And one of those things is identifying your critical things to measure. What are the things that we call them critical metrics, critical KPIs? And so like in business, it's like, okay, well, safety, productivity, things like that, and a few others. And so you develop like a scorecard. Well, what would Southwood's scorecard be? Like as far as the unmovable things that we would want to measure and make sure that we like are effective in, what would those be? And I don't have the answers right now, but I think it would be good to, as we go along our journey, identify, what do we want to see in these key areas that if we are tracking on these things, we'll be in good shape by 2050. So.
Yeah. And I think there's a way to do it. I mean, Paul wrote a whole letter to Corinth because there were problems that needed to be corrected. Obviously, there's a way to measure, identify problems, correct them, and to measure and reevaluate. It exists, but how do we go about doing it?
Yeah, it's a good question.
So that's something to consider. Anything else on leadership we need to hit on before? Okay, so education is the next thing I listed. And just briefly, transformative education is one of our core values. So that being the case, in 2050, without reading our core values, will transformative education be observed as being a core value to Southwood? Does that make sense? So could somebody walk in here and say, wow, these guys really prioritize transformative education? They may not express those words.
Yeah, without reading it on the wall, like this is our core value, education. Yes. Would they be able to identify, okay, these people care about education as a vet? By 2050, I think that even today, you could say that we care about education. I think that maybe one of the things we're kind of flirting with and figuring out is, like like we had a meeting several weeks back, right? I think it was at the beginning of July. We've got a shifting demographic of people in the church, and so we all of us, as we sit at this table, are on the same page with how to teach. Like, how do we teach? What's the right approach? As far as methods and shifting and employing new methods for adapting to the changes in the demographics, we're figuring out. So there's some change that's happening there as our youth grow, as our formerly teenagers start to look at what colleges they would like to go to, as our young families are starting to have babies. Like, what do we do? And that will affect education as those things change. And so we're working on that now. But I think that education is prevalent as a core value, and that someone could walk in and say, yeah, that matters a lot to them. I think that as far as effectiveness of meeting the needs of every demographic that you've got, we're in process on trying a few new things as things have changed. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think the biggest thing that I think needs to change is, I think if Southwood wants to be effective, we need to embrace and incorporate as much new technology as possible. And this is, again, not getting at what we're teaching, but how. I mean, it's like when my grandfather went through seminary and was learning Greek, he did not learn it the same way I learned it. He learned the same things, and there were the fundamentals that he learned, but he didn't have Logos. I mean, he had tables of books laid out. Yeah. I have one screen or two screens. Yeah. It's just changed the learning process. And with all of these tools, there's problems with that.
Yeah.
But do we just say, we're not going to use those tools because we don't like this one thing that one person did? They can be bad. I mean, we can leverage technology any which way. I mean, AI. Just think 25 years from now, AI, I imagine, is going to be totally unrecognizable, and people are going to laugh about the things we're impressed with. So how are we going to utilize these tools well
Yeah.
to help in the future? Or are we just going to say, nah, we're staying away from that? We're just going to keep it.
I think, I'm going to do some speculation here. We'll see where it goes. But, back in the first century, there was content that needed to be taught. To what extent did the apostles and those that they put in place, to teach and replicate themselves, to what extent do we think that historically those individuals utilize the tools of the times and the analogies of the times and the methods of the times to get their point across? And I think it's reasonable to conclude that they paid attention to those things. And so today, as we've got to changes and we're technologically advancing, and the church is 2,000 plus years removed from its inception. We've got to look at what the times are now. And I'm coming at it from the perspective of kids, looking at the youth. They're learning in a certain way. They're being approached in a certain way in their public and private and home schools. And, that they're kind of being hardwired to consume information a certain way. We absolutely can throw the charts out and open them on the table, and be like, all right, you're going to learn this way. But going back to the effectiveness bit, how effective would that be? What kind of a response are we going to get? And I'm 31 years old, so I can't say I'm old school, but I did the whole martial arts thing. And so I have an appreciation for tradition. And so, when we were sitting under our master instructors and they were like, well, when I was your age, we would go train out by the lake and we would hold our stances. And this is just the way we did it. I thought that was cool. But that's just me, I don't necessarily think that may be the most effective way to do to do it for everybody. So, so as far as technology goes, what are some thoughts that you have on it? You said one of the things that needs to change. What are some just thoughts that you have on
I think
incorporating
it's
technology?
just deliberately, I think primarily it comes in with our teachers deliberately investing in tools and learning how to use them and teach. Because all of our kids are using, they're born basically with an iPhone in their hand, and they're going to use it far better than we will. I've heard the typing class still is taught. I don't know that why. Kids are typing way younger than I was.
Only with thumb.
Yeah, but these things are changing. It's a part of their life that's not going to be. It's never going to not be a part of their life.
Sure.
So I think we need to find the tools that they're using and incorporate that into my niece and nephew. When we went down for Tori's grandfather's funeral, I was hanging out with my niece and nephew, and my niece was playing on her tablet, and she had Blue Letter Bible on her tablet. And I was like, I haven't seen that logo. I was playing with it with her. And she was showing me, they have an app for Blue Letter Bible for kids on a tablet. It's really cool. It's actually cooler and I think better designed than the Blue Letter Bible website. It's really cool. I didn't even know it existed.
I didn't either.
But things like that.
How old is she?
She's 8.
Interesting.
So, she's already learning a program, not Logos, but the comparable. And she's going to be far more proficient with it.
Well, she
than
looks
I
like
was.
send her to me.
Well,
Logosthenes clunky. My old word search is so much faster.
Yeah. AI is an issue we're going to have to deal with.
Yes.
Right now, maybe we could do an episode sometime, just wonky AI theology. But it's so easy to just plug something into AI and say, here's what it came up with. So I'm going to do my Bible study on Ephesians 1:1. Oh, there, AI said it. That's what it is. So AI has to be addressed.
I agree with you. Especially after what Travis sent us. Guys out there won't know, but you can do various searches and AI is going to pull from every source it can. And some of your people in your congregation by 2050 will be AI taught.
Yeah.
Or should we say mistaught?
Yeah.
And it comes back to the age-old thing. Have we taught our people to verify? No matter what our technology is, we still need to verify. And that's an important aspect of teaching. So when we talk about what we need to do to measure teaching, we get a couple of sources. We first of all have the input from people, what they've learned, engagement tools. You could look at people in the congregation, so maybe doing that, and some be like intense, and you could judge. I once told a guy that was teaching a Sunday school class when I was a head deacon at a church, you need to stop teaching because people haven't been listening. I think that's a good gauge of effective teaching, what people are doing, how they're interacting, what they're learning. I don't know if we should give a poll out there and say, how much have you learned since you've been at Southwood? Liz and I have talked extensively about some various things that can be incorporated here from me, not from you guys, but things I'm looking at and changing or trying to tweak a little bit because our congregation is kind of changing.
Yeah, I heard you're putting a hologram of yourself up.
I'm thinking of doing that from the top of the pulpit, and it'll be like that Star Wars technology. That'd be fun. But when you listed here, which is kind of an interesting aspect, since I grew up in the baby boomers, I think I was towards the end of the baby boomers. Now you have Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta, and I read that, and I go, "What are those?" Because I'm thinking of with the millennial kids, and all that. So every generation is going to be called something.
By the way, Mike and I are the youngest millennials.
The youngest?
The youngest millennials.
Okay. That's interesting. So Gen Beta, so we're going to go from Alpha, Beta, Gamma. We're going to keep going. How do we reach these? Well, the first thing I believe should always be the consistent is use of the Bible, good theology. Now we're talking about different things. Teaching the Word of God, which is always relevant, because I hear people today say, let's make the Bible relevant. That's a stupid statement. Bible is relevant. Our way of teaching may be irrelevant. I grew up with a thing called a chalkboard. What did you have in school? You had the whiteboard, or did you have smart?
We had no. We had predominantly overheads and the.
Oh, you had overheads? Really?
We had overhead projectors.
For those out there, go look it up what an overhead looks like.
I remember we got a smart board at school. They were just coming out with.
Okay.
Out of school.
Okay, that's interesting. Now there are some schools every kid has their own laptop in the school.
Yep.
So technology changes. Maybe someday we'll say everybody bring in your iPad, your laptop, and sermon notes will come up on them automatically, kind of thing, which would be cool. But we're not there yet. So I think we've got to be open to whatever's available. How AI, that'll be a really cool podcast. So let's feed AI and information, see what pops up, and kind of talk about what just came up. So AI can be trained. I think at some point there'll be an individual AI that will. I unplugged all my Google devices at home because I think because I one day I went on my phone and I said, I haven't even done a search on that, and it's must have heard what I was talking about. How to do with different bowling balls. And I'm going, how did that happen? So we're being listened to, and I think your device may be listening to us, and your device. How do you shut that off? No, seriously, how do you shut that off? So I think there may be an individual aspect to AI, which will be interesting. So are we ready for that? Are we prepared for that? Or are we just going to ignore it?
Well, ready or not, here it is.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
And that also integrates in how we're educated and how others will be educated. And here's going to be the tough thing for you guys more than me. When I teach, I oftentimes run up against what people have always believed, and they have a problem learning something different that's not what they've always been taught. You're going to run into people that are now AI taught that may be a huge mess of things, and you're going to have to unteach some or reteach, correct? Somebody that was taught by AI, and they're assuming since AI is drawn from all the sources, and they're probably, to their thinking, all good sources, how are you going to change their thinking to say, now, what you were taught by a computer that should know everything, they don't know anything?
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting aspect of education.
And I think, I'd be inclined to think that may not be, I think it's going to be a problem, but I think current state of AI, where it is at, people are leery of it, and there's enough information circulating out there where AI is giving faulty answers that it may actually have the opposite effect and people are more critical. I don't know that that's the case, but it could be.
And either aspect, though, you're still fighting against technology.
Yeah.
And I think technology has a really good aspect to help us. At the same time, it hinders other people that are so dependent on it thinking it's real. I mean, how many people think social media is real, that they really have a relationship with somebody, whether it's physical or not, on the internet kind of thing? And so although these phones have great abilities, and I'm sure they're going to get better because every time I turn around, I have a Pixel 8. I think there's a Pixel 38 now, probably, because we keep updating our technology. Not a problem with that, unless it becomes the only go-to. So I still believe people out there that are listening to podcasts, people that come to our church, need to be fed so that they can go search for themselves and verify and see this is what the Bible says. So how do we incorporate? I guess the question comes down to how will we incorporate technology at a later stage of the game and still keep people engaged enough to verify everything they hear anyway.
Yeah,
that's going to be.
I think that's where I was going to take this, just on the AI. And I think the most influence that AI is going to have, that we're going to see, is AI is going to be leaned upon to do the critical thinking. And so the more prominent it becomes, people are going to be like, oh, I'm not going to critically think. I'm going to have AI critically think for me, and I'm not going to do the work to verify.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big problem.
I agree. I think that's a big problem.
So
It's a big problem today.
Where we're at today, 20 years ago, I think the number one app on your phone, if you look at the list of apps, was probably like Mahjong or some kind of game, a game. Now you look at the number one and probably number two is ChatGPT is probably number one. So people are downloading that a lot. And probably number 3 or 4 is Temu or Shein to go shop. So they're using their phones for, which we didn't have 20 years ago. They're using their phones for getting AI to teach them something and to shop whenever. Amazon's probably up there. What do you have? Did you look it up?
You don't want to know.
No, it's not. Don't tell me it's some porn site. Stop that.
ChatGPT, Zoom,
Yes.
Bumble dating app, Tinder dating app, and Discord.
Nice.
I never heard of any of those except the first one.
Nice. So apparently, yeah, people are wanting to learn things from AI and
To date.
And to date.
Yeah.
I got my date on AI. What is AI
I did
deliver?
on AI.
Is this the picture?
I think Luther's talking about that, though.
I have no idea.
Pretty sure he has.
But so we gotta probably wrap up on
Yes.
education. But I think my conclusion statement on this is, as much as I love tradition, there's this channel on Facebook that I sometimes watch, and it's called So Expensive, and it basically takes you to some part of the world, and they do like a mini 10-minute like documentary on like, here's this like craft or like this like oriental teapot that they're making. Why is it so dang expensive? And they show you how they make them, and they're using these archaic methods from like centuries ago. That's why they're so expensive. And at the end of every one of those videos, you hear some comment that the narrator's saying like, this is the last shop that exists that does it this way. And I'm like, well, yeah, duh, because there's technological advances that have improved upon the way of making it.
But they have they made it by hand, and is it better? That's all.
Sure. And in some things, there are certain methods that are archaic that are also the best way to make it. I mean, but in other instances, the archaic methods were because there wasn't any better way to do it. And so I think that we should be mindful of, is there a better way to connect the content to the minds of, people in our historical context today, 21st century, and just pay attention to those tools as they arise to see if maybe they could be more helpful than, past methods that we could use. So I think that, that will be helpful in getting us where we want to be in 2050. So.
Well, and technology, I think, ties over into outreach. If we are not leveraging technology well, will we be effective in outreach?
And as bluntly as I can say it, and as nicely as I can say it, I mean, we need to stay. God, it's gonna be tough because our content, the doctrine, is most important, right? Like that's what we're about. But also, like, the challenge is, can we stay true to a doctrine and content from the original time with the original hermeneutic? Can we stay true to that while also at the same time with our methods and with our culture and with our organization, when someone steps in to learn that content, they don't feel like they're stepping into a place that's still 60 years ago. You know what I mean? And so that's the challenge, in my view, is as the times change and as the demographics change and as the world changes around us, is the church, I'm not saying the doctrine is relevant, is the church being perceived as relevant to the people that are out there? And
now,
I think
are you talking about our church or church in
specifically our church. And I think that as time goes on, I wouldn't doubt for a second that as Southwood moves into the future, that there's going to be faithful learners out there that are going to do their due diligence and get online and find the Southwood website, and they're gonna find their way here. They're gonna be like, this is what I've been looking for. But is that all that we're after? Is collecting people that have already been developed? And I would say, just personally speaking, I would love to not only collect those people and deploy them for service in our local church, but also to turn over a leaf of how can we become more agile in developing people that are not those people, that are really well equipped and know what's up with doctrine. How do we get someone from like the baby steps? How do we develop them into people like us, that can teach and train others as well?
I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm thinking there's three aspects that we're when we're talking about outreach, we have different aspects of it.
Sure.
The basic idea that I'm thinking of, the basics of outreach, is bringing people in. Okay, how do we do that? So Eric and I have been talking about different aspects of PR to get people to know what we even do here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a weird place in the city. We're centrally located, sort of. We're more south, but we're in a good street out front. The problem is whoever designed Southwood wasn't thinking, because we're 150 yards off the road, so all they see is a sign. Most people that outreach is number one, people pass by, they see it, they know it's a church, so they want to explore it. So they may come in checking us out. I don't get excited, but I think the number one aspect of outreach is individually everybody bringing somebody in.
I agree with you.
Then the second part is in-reach, not outreach. Once they're in the door, do people come alongside them and explain what we do? No matter what our facility looks like, I think we need people to say, hey, nice to meet you. I would love to come alongside you. Later, one of the things you and I talked about was an exit poll. Why people come here and why do they leave so fast? That's not a lot, so don't get excited. But there are people that come one time and leave. And I would love to know what especially when they say to me, we've checked you out on the internet. We know what you're about. And then they only come once, which is a horrible way of checking a church, any church. But it's in reach. So when we bring people in, whether it's like one of you guys bring a friend in and you talk to them and say, what did you learn? That kind of thing. So there's in reach. Then there's another, side of outreach, which is more follow-up. So do we have those things in place today? Well, some people are bringing people in. Do we have in reach? Some people are doing that. Do we have follow-up? Very rarely, unless, we spend time with them. And sometimes people are not wanting that. I mean, there are people that come to this church and say, no, I'm just here to be taught. You don't have to, baby me kind of thing. But I think that's an important part of shepherding people, is getting to know them. So when we talk about outreach, I think it begins with individuals reaching individuals. I mean, just think about it. When I was a kid, there was a big push for evangelism. I don't know if you guys went through that when you were younger. And the basic mantra was win one, bring one. And then it was a whole process of multiplication of what you would do is multiplying people that would follow Christ. So if you win one, you start with one, that one wins one, now you got two, and mathematically multiplication is a cool thing. I don't think people do that today, because I don't think people really know how to talk to people and do math, both of them. There are a lot of people out there that do math, but not math. Sorry, that's just for, anyway. But when we talk as a church, outreach, and I think what you put in here is interesting. Deliberate efforts to engage people.
Yeah.
I don't think people actually have a deliberate effort I mean, how often do we talk to people, get to know them outside the church, and do we invite them to church? My mom's been inviting people for ages, and I say, don't get your hopes up, because most of the time they'll say, yeah, we'll be there Sunday, and don't show up.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna save my comment to be the segue comment from outreach to body life. So
Yeah.
do you have any?
we got like 10 minutes.
No, I mean,
I think maybe we should probably shoot for doing like 4, and then
Okay.
we can't probably get through all 8. Yeah. So I'll segue us from outreach to body life. So you mentioned the good, and I've taught that from the pulpit myself is saying, hey, I think that the wrong model is to look at it as like, hey, I want you to hear some truth. This is my pastor. Like, come onto my turf, come to my church, right? Sit amongst a bunch of strangers, and I'll be right here with you. And I know I'm the only person you'll know, and you'll get the truth from that guy that's prepared to listen. That's an asinine model. I think that it is true that the most, we have our mission statement and vision statement, to have a reproductive nature of the church. Like we want to expand. We want for there to be replication of believers. That happens predominantly on an individual level. So I think that you've mentioned this, I'm kind of known as, or you've seen me as a guy that I have no problem bringing random people to church, right? So some of them will.
I will never say, are you the random person Mike brought? I won't say that.
Sure. Well, sure. But I'll bring friends, I'll bring coworkers and whatnot, people coming in Southwood. And so I'm segueing into body life because yes, the content is what people need. And so, we've talked about teaching the word and being true to the original authorial intent, and also helping to see, well, how does this impact us today? The Bible is for us, the Bible is always for us, but not always to us in the original context, right? But it's all for us and profitable. So we're working on that and we're doing that. But also with the body life aspect, you're talking about why do people leave? I think a weakness, if we did a SWOT analysis of Southwood, is one of the weaknesses here is the sustainability of new people, right? We don't sustain.
Why?
Yeah, okay, I'm getting there. We don't sustain new people. And I would say part of the why is that, and man, I have had people challenge me to my face on this, because I used to be able, if you're not mature enough to sit here and just take the doctrine in and grow, then that's what we're about. And so this is who Southwood is. And I was on the phone with you the other day, Pastor Bush, and I was communicating to you. I'm like, man, I'm one of the people here that teaches Bible. And sometimes I get weary and I just need relationships with people, or I need someone to talk to. Or, I want to have dinner with someone and just share life with them. And that's a weakness that we're working on here at Southwood. And I think that, whenever new individuals come into a church, and I'm going to speculate here, generally people launch into looking for a new place to go. You're going to have couple different groups, but one group sure might be, I'm here because I'm trying to switch up my doctrine and find the truth. A lot of people that you're going to meet are people that have really, really wild life problems, and they're needing for the Bible to meet them where they're at, and people to meet them where they're at. And if they're in the middle of a crisis, we're going through James, right? If they're in the middle of a crisis or something, and they're wanting to come into the body of believers, to do life with them and build those relationships and have that body life, right? And they're not getting it, and they're in the middle of a crisis, you bet that they're going to probably go somewhere that's going to meet that temporary need that they have. And they're not really thinking they're not really thinking in terms of, is this the best church for me long-term for my educational growth and my spiritual growth? They're just trying to survive, keep their head above water. So, yeah.
Well, looking at James, for instance, James is dealing with specific issues that his audience was going through at that time.
Yeah.
And he's encouraging and equipping them to deal with those issues. And I think that's an integral part of a healthy church, is going to actively engage with helping its members deal with the issues they're facing. And we are in a philosophical model of church that has an inherent weakness of prioritizing and focusing solely on teaching Bible. And a shortcoming and a weakness that we tend to have is not dealing or ignoring current issues. And that's not necessarily to say that those are irrelevant, but that's a weakness that we have. And you can obviously sway too far on that pendulum and make everything just about current events and newspaper exegesis.
Yeah. And I think what you're getting at with the we there too is not just Southwood.
No.
That we is in Bible churches. If you go look at just Bible churches in general, that's a weakness. Is generally. I mean, I remember when I went to Chafer Conference. We went to Chafer Conference for the first time. I thought West Houston Bible was going to be huge. We might even be bigger, than West Houston Bible.
Close.
And something like that. So I was surprised. And again, not about size, but just I thought like how big is our sphere of influence? And I think that as the cliche goes, the church is seen by the secular world as like we shoot our wounded, right? And when we want to be a hospital for people to get them spiritually fixed, right? To get the rubber meeting the road. And I think that as far as growing our body of believers, we should be, as Southwood, as a body of Christ, as an extension of the body of Christ, exemplifying characteristics of the church that we are taught to do, loving each other well, developing relationships. And I will say, like throughout the summer with the firesides and with the kids event that we did last night, and a cool opportunity that I had, to partner in service towards the kids with dispensers, like developing those relationships among people who are wanting to get involved will help us to pay more attention to the relational aspect and the body life aspect of the church. Because I think doctrinally we're pretty set. We understand what's going on. But people are after connections with it.
Well, to address what you said, just so our audience will know, we're getting better at body life. But we got a long road to go. And I think that starts with people wanting to actually do that, to interact with other people. I've known since you've been here, you're interacting with various people. You've done that since you've been here. I've always done that as much as I can. So the contagiousness of, because you even said somebody that you met with didn't know that they could talk that much. That's what happens when we build these little relationships. I think over coffee is a great time to sit there and get to know people individually. But then we have so many different aspects as working in body life. I think it's centered in teaching God's word. It's centered in others coming up and coming alongside other people to aid them in their journey. Because somebody may walk in, you have a friend that walks in, has personal issues. I'm already prepared to teach whatever I'm teaching, but I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And nobody else usually does. And they say, well, that one sermon didn't meet my need. I'm out of here. Well, that's not the right approach to Christian education anyway. But yes, they do have needs. We need to be able to address it on a different level, not maybe Sunday morning. So these are things that we need to think through. So 2050, what will look like? Prayerfully, body life will get better, stronger, interacting with each other, be more in unity with the mission. You said we have the church, but the mission of what believers should be doing, which is loving one another. It comes in different phases, different shapes, different ways. Just because somebody's not doing something with other people, I believe some of our older ladies can't do anything, but I know they pray. And I think that's an aspect of our church we need more of.
Yeah.
So there's different things we can say. I don't want to come across to our audience that we're constantly saying this needs to change. I want to come across we're doing better, but we need your help to make it better. And if you're not from our church, I don't think anybody should go to church and sit in a pew and do nothing. That's just my aspect. Everybody's got a gift they bring to the table, and we should involve people as much as we can with the body life of a church. And maybe that's our shortcoming, not plugging people in where they should go. That's
sure. I think that you hit the nail on the head with, one of the things that we're getting better at, but also, one of the weaknesses is just as a reminder here, Jesus himself said, don't be a hearer. It's not about hearing. It's about hearing and applying,
Exactly.
And so, and I myself, I like to learn things. And so it's easy to consume knowledge and to learn and learn and learn. Learning is not growing. Learning and applying is growing.
Right.
And so if we're just after the pursuit of an increase in understanding, right? And that's the temptation, is if someone new comes in, I think, I don't want to make a blanket statement here. Also, I'll just speak for myself. The temptation for me is like, I want for someone to come into Southwood and to understand. Chances are they're probably not, like, for the first, I don't know, however many months or whatnot, maybe they will. But as far as if I'm bringing someone in that's, it's kind of just starting out, they're probably going to be behind the curve. And so I think that's something that's important for us as a church to remember, is that as we see new people, like, we see the new family with 2 kids walking in, or we see the single person, that's, kind of checking out Southwood and whatnot. We have just had an opportunity walk in the door, an object of our affection, if you will, an object of what we have learned, walk in, that we can direct what we've been equipped with toward, to share love with, to help them to grow and things of that nature. So I'm making this comment to say that, I'm encouraging the church at Southwood to be mindful of that. And I'm not saying this in like a condescending way. I'm just saying, I'm speaking to myself too, that we're not just in the pursuit of knowledge for knowledge. We're in the pursuit of knowledge to apply it, to help people and to grow together and to help other people to grow. So,
yeah. Well, we made it halfway through. The bulk of this conversation has really focused on kind of where we're at and some of the things that we're working through.
Sure.
As we're starting to engage in this conversation of planning and engaging in this beginning steps of this planning process. I think it's important because if we're going to lead the church to 2050 and beyond, I think we need to lay it out deliberately and think all these things through. And that's a lot of work, but I think it also requires this dialogue and feedback and brainstorming and all those things.
Great.
All right. Any last thoughts?
Remember to subscribe to our channel.
If
you have any questions, email them to podcast@southwoodbiblechurch.com.
I love how you point, like, where you think the subscribe button's going to be.
It's got to be somewhere.
It's got to be somewhere.
And so yeah, someone's,
what is
so it's going to be like over here. You're like, subscribe. Like,
subscribe. Well, it's usually in the bottom of the screen or in the corner.
Who's to say?
Find it. You'll know what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.